the people of Suweida are trying to hold on to something simple: dignity, safety, and some control over their own future.
The Druze society itself is an issue related to geopolitics. What's going to happen to post-war Assad Syria? And so Suweida is starting the debate in Syria about the nature of the post-Assad regime. However, the other question comes to a place, which is Israel.
You cannot blame Suweida, you have to blame the one who gave Israel the excuse to do and to interfere.
Can he be made into a legitimate president? Show me the details. The media says yes. He meets Mr. Macron, he meets, But when it comes to the details, it doesn't add up. The guy is Islamizing the Syrian state.
If he wanted to stop this, he could stop it. He could not send them, towards Suweida, but he did it. By the way, he fell in the trap.
Whose trap?
Israel. In Baku, they gave him this trap and he went and he fell. He fell for this.
Syria needs a transitional justice path, and the stakeholders involved in it cannot continue with the idea that you can rule Syria, some place like Syria, with such a government, with an opaque transitional process, a non-inclusive process.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 3 of Real Talk. Today, we're focusing on Syria, and in particular, As-Suwayda, a southern Syrian province and the heartland of the country's Druze community. We have recently witnessed massacres of Druze people by the Syrian military. But since the downfall of the Syrian regime, Syria has seen many minorities, including Alawites and Christians, attacked and slaughtered. We also recently witnessed the bombing of the Syrian Ministry of Defense and presidential palace by Israeli aircraft. Syria is in turmoil, and the recent violence deserves attention, which is the reason for our discussion today. But I'm going to declare openly that I have limited knowledge about this topic, and why I've asked two experts to join me on the call today, Nizar Ghanem and Shadi Abou Karam, who I will introduce officially shortly. But let me set the scene for you just to give you some background and some context to the conversation and what's been happening. For years, Suweida stayed mostly quiet during Syria's civil war. It avoided much of the violence seen elsewhere, staying under government control, while frustration quietly built up. But in recent years, that silence has turned into action, and since 2021, Suweida has changed from a calm region into one where protests and armed resistance have taken hold. To help us understand what's really happening, we are joined by two guests. First, from Lebanon, we welcome Nizar Ghanem, a researcher and policy expert who is also a proud member of the Druze community. He brings both academic insight and personal experience to the table. Welcome, Nizar.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Joining him is Shadi Abou Karam, who was born in Suweida and now lives in Berlin. He is a researcher and community advocate who follows events in Suweida very closely, staying in regular contact with people still living there. The story begins in 2020 when young Druze and local activists in Suweida started peaceful protests. They called for an end to corruption, forced military service, and broken promises by the Syrian regime. By 2021, even the Druze religious leaders, long seen as loyal to the Bashar al-Assad government, started speaking out. One of the most important voices was Sheikh Hikmat al-Hijri. Once a supporter of President Bashar al-Assad, Sheikh al-Hijri changed course and began calling for the dignity and rights of his people. In 2022, things took another turn. Local self-defense groups that had once fought ISIS began to challenge the Syrian government. Groups like the Men of Dignity, Fajr forces, clashed with military and security forces in areas such as Shahaba and the outskirts of Suweida city. In July 2025, Suweida became a major flashpoint in post-Assad Syria. Just months after Assad's fall, fierce fighting broke out between Druze fighters and government troops loyal to Syria's new president, Ahmad al-Sharaa. Over 3 days earlier this month, more than 20 fighters were killed, and the government used helicopters and artillery in the battle, marking one of the most intense periods in Suwaida's modern history. Once again, it was Sheikh al-Hijri who helped stop the bloodshed. His message was strong and clear. Our silence is not weakness. Today, he's seen not just as a religious leader, but also as a key political voice trying to keep peace while defending his people's rights. But there's more going on behind the scenes. Some reports say that both Israel and the United States may be involved, watching events very closely. Suweida sits near the border of Jordan and the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, making it a place of great strategic interest. Israel may see it as a buffer zone against Iranian influence. The US is said to be in quiet contact with Druze civil society groups through NGOs and diaspora networks. In this complicated picture, the people of Suweida are trying to hold on to something simple: dignity, safety, and some control over their own future. They're not asking for independence. They want local control and respect from Damascus. But in a country broken by war and divided along sectarian lines, even these small demands carry great risk. Today, Nizar and Shadi, we are going to join with them in exploring the biggest questions, and they are going to lead this debate to guide me and us in what's really going on. So today, and right now, I'm going to hand over the floor and start with you, Nizar, to give us your insights. And I hope that introduction was fair, accurate, and if it wasn't, please clarify for us. I know you both you and Shadi do not sit on the same line. You have varying perspectives, which is great to bring into this conversation. So please start the discussion and let us get into this debate.
Thank you, Daisy. Thank you so much. I mean, no, it's a fair introduction. Of course, it's a very complex issue and a very complex geopolitical situation and geography. So, varying points of view is just healthy, and I think the Druze society historically is proud to have that. It considers it actually as part of its greatest asset is that it allows for these different viewpoints. I think the main issue right now, even tearing apart the Druze society itself, is an issue related to geopolitics. What's going to happen to post-war Assad Syria? And so Suweida is starting the debate in Syria about the nature of the post-Assad regime. Mm-hmm. Because of course the Sharaa came as a consolidated, if you want, major powers agreed on his name, including Turkey, Saudi Arabia, UAE, United States, and the EU, right? Mm-hmm. But the question remains is that Sharaa did not include in the transitional process a very inclusive process. So today it's an opaque constitution where Sharaa takes most of the
power.
At the same time, it's a question of ISIS, basically, and the jihadis, militias that form the basis of the new Syrian army, which is, for a place like Syria, where the Kurds, Alawites, Christians, Druze, tons of ethnic groups and minorities and religious groups, it's a frightening prospect. So it's only natural that part of Suweida, or the majority of actually Suweida population, have multiple question marks about the nature of the state they're joining and where Sharaa is asking them to submit to it. At the same time, the Kurds, and also, of course, the Alawite incidents. It's practically war crimes that happened in the Sahel, in the coastline of Syria a few months ago, where also the ragtag militias that form somehow the basis of the Syrian army have basically invaded the Alawites. The Suweida population is alert about this issue. However, the other question comes to place, which is Israel. Israel is using this whole situation to its advantage. It's still incursions into Syrian land is underway. We're talking today that Israel is a few kilometers away from Damascus. And the fact that, of course, to my mind, Sharaa made a big strategic mistake by entering Suweida militarily, because it gave the opportunity for Israel to enter as a player in southern Syria. And at the same time, I consider that the Sheikh Hijri has made a mistake of also calling for the support of Israel. I understand, I mean, he's placed, if you want, in a corner. And I think that from my perspective, the question is now about rational politics. Are there rational actors in Syria capable of bringing together all these different fears into a constitutional process and transitional period or not? If not, we're talking about the falling apart of Syria into separate states or cantons or another phase of the civil war, which will threaten Turkey, will threaten Saudi Arabia, international order, etc., etc. So we're in a critical time, and I think that there is no time for, how to say it, reactive positions. So in that sense, I'm for a process.
Thank you for that. I'll hand the floor over to you, Shadi, from your perspective.
Hi, Daisy, and thanks for having me. Please, first, let me start, to explain something. No, I'm with Nizar. We are on the same page.
Okay.
On many things, we have different, perspectives on things. But let me start by just correcting some things, like you said in your introduction. You said demonstration started in 2020, and that's incorrect. We started from the very beginning. And if you want, Suweida was away before going ahead any other city from 2003 when we start to do public debates, against the Assad regime and all these things. And since 2011, people in Suweida, they start demonstrating. And I will go furthermore. The military action started in Suweida, but there was a comprehensive decision from everyone that Suweida should be a calm area. It's a shelter. There's people coming here. So even the people who left the army, Syrian army, the Assad army, and they went and they start to fight, they went to Dar'a, although they started their clashes inside Suweida. They have been asked to move to Dar'a. If you want to fight, you can go there because this is a shelter. So Suweida was involved since day one. Suweida refused to be a part of this bloodshed. They refused to send their sons to Assad army. We have some people went there, but give me another sect or ethnic. They were not involved, and especially the Sunnis, they were the main center of Assad regime. So anyhow, this is the thing I wanted to explain.
Thank you.
And the other thing about Sheikh Hikmat, so we can build the foundations for our debate. Sheikh Hikmat was not loyal to Assad regime. Sheikh Hikmat was playing his natural role as a sheikh for a minority to build this equal distance from being pro and opposite. Because since day one, when the regime started to arrest political activists, Sheikh Hikmat got involved and called and got some people released. He's playing his role as a sheikh. And here I'm not I'm not talking about him or I'm not defeating him. I also stand on the same distance from all religious guys, as I'm atheist and radical atheist. And the last thing before I start, I would like to ask, because I don't know, maybe I missed this statement from Sheikh Hikmat, and I'm sorry, Nizar, to use this word. The Sharia propaganda so far is that Hikmat al-Hajari called for Israeli protection specifically, and Hikmat al-Hajari called Israel to bomb Syria, which didn't stop for the last, I don't know how many decades, But if this man has this power over Israel, I guess we should follow him.
Well, that is a very good point. And one thing I wanted to get into is about the connection, because even Israel, there are Druze in the Golan Heights and they went and protected them. and there is a lot of Druze in Israel as well. What is that relationship? What is that dynamic? And is it true that Sheikh al-Hikmat has a connection with the Israelis?
Yeah, definitely we'll go by this topic, and we will go like in deeper, discussion on this topic, and there is a relation, and this is like
Okay, you want to talk
not a
about something
secret.
else
Yeah,
first?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Go
like
for
I'm
it.
asking, to explain when did he call exactly for Israeli protection? He called for international protection, which is his profound, rights to do, like when you are facing a genocidal attack. So no one can blame him to do this.
Right.
Like we all called for this international protection. We are like, I'm a part of a political party, and we called for international protection, not just for Druze, but for everyone, because we saw that coming. So if this happened and I missed it, please, like, correct me, because I'm trying to find this statement when he called, for Israeli protection in specific, and like to bomb Damascus, because that's what led to the massacre we saw recently.
Okay, just on that point, my support is telling me that the relationship, it's not him directly that asked for it. It was Muwaffaq Tarif, the religious Druze leader in Israel. And there is a video between him, Muwaffaq, and Muwaffaq Tarif and Netanyahu. He's demanding the protection of Druze in Suweida. So I think that's where that comes from. Does that make sense? Did you see that?
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Nizar is working with someone, or like his relative, said something in another country, and I'm coming, to get Nizar head. Like, this make no sense. It's an excuse, you know. It's just a propaganda they are using.
Right.
Okay.
That's your pure point of view.
Yep.
Yep.
You know, Muffaq Tarif also is doing his role. I don't agree with his politics aspect, or anything. I don't agree with him, but like he's playing also his role. But Hikmat al-Hajari cannot take this blame on, and Suweida cannot pay the price for what Israel is doing, because you cannot stop Israel from Israeling. This is what they are doing. This is what they do. This is what they were built to do. You know, you
Yeah.
cannot blame Suweida. You have to blame the one who give Israel the excuse to do and to interfere.
Nizar, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think like let's also be fair to Suweida. I mean, Suweida has not just doesn't have only Hikmat al-Hajari, so it has more than it's about four sheikhs basically. There's Hinnawi, there's Jarboua, there's and I think that Shara's mistake, the central government's mistake in this campaign, which is basically showed to the world, if you want, that the Syrian army is based on tribal militias, and that is the biggest problem. It unified Suweida around Hijri even more. And so in effect, the Shara's he overplayed his hand, and in the process gave the opportunity for the Israelis to use it against him by showing themselves as actually rational forces compared to an Islamically dominated government in Damascus. Regardless of the situation, I think that the main issue, for example, that creates even tensions between the Druze themselves is, for example, there's a big faction. I mean, let's not forget that Suweida was the beginning of the anti-French revolution in 1925 against French colonialism. And the Druze actually, although being 5% of the population, gave the most of the martyrs against the French and the British colonization of the Levant. So because of their strategic position. So there's a massive wave. I mean, to give you an example, like the first, like the Arab army going to in 48 to save the Palestinians from the Nakba was led by Druze generals. The Druze were always part of, for example, the Seventh Ottoman Army. They've always had a military history in the past, and the colonial borders that were drawn dissected the Druze societies into four places: one in Lebanon, one in Syria, one in Jordan, and one in Palestine, and even the Golan, which is in fact, a minority suffers massively, but yet they dominate the highlands of the Levant. And in essence, they are basically right now placed in four separate countries like the Kurds and cannot crisscross. Like my grandmother is from Suweida, for example. I have family in Galilee, which I cannot see. So they are connected together, and they're very closely knit tribal alliances between them. The main issue right now is that the Druze are placed at a geopolitical center where there's Israel and Jordan, right, who do not want the Shara government to enter into southern Syria because they're afraid of the jihadis. At the same time, Israel's see this as an opportunity to enter and create David's pathway to the Kurds, which basically is dividing Syria into four cantons.
Wow.
This is a major nightmare for the Turks. So all of a sudden, a small issue like Suweida, which is a small province, 5,000 square kilometers, it's now a flashpoint of all these geopolitical interests, and the Druze, in effect, are placed in the middle of it. What is not helpful is two things: reactive positions from the Druze, who, seeing the jihadis coming towards them with a genocidal intent, freaking out and asking Israel to intervene, or even further, maybe aligning themselves with the Israeli army. Who knows? I mean, when you have a gun at your head, you would do anything. The other problem is, again, the jihadis. So for me, I think that basically, if an international agreement is reached whereby Shara is pushed to move into a clear technocratic government with constitutional rights for minorities, freedom of religion, all of a sudden the reactive position of some of the Druze in Suweida, even the Druze of Palestine or Israel, like Tarif, would highly diminish. In effect, I think out of this battle, the only winners in effect are Israel and Iran. Iran, because now it gives the space to Hezbollah, because all of a sudden Hezbollah is saying, you're asking me to put down my weapons in Lebanon, while I see thousands of jihadis crisscrossing and genociding ethnic groups. Why would I have the interest in putting down my weapons? And Israel, on the other hand, is having a great time. It's doing a genocide in Gaza, and now it's looking at its neighbor doing, war crimes for the time being against other ethnic populations or minorities.
Going back to your original point about the geopolitics, is this a much bigger game than we're actually witnessing? It's not about the locals, but it's a great strategy of divide and conquer, disrupt Syria, disrupt Lebanon, and they, create tension. They've tried to do it in Iran, where they want the people to overthrow the government. But I always thought that al-Sharaa was their man. I thought they put him in. And yet they went and bombed the Ministry of Defense, and we've seen a lot of attacks, and the language that was coming from him was that he was even willing to agree to a peace treaty, some sort of negotiations and sort of peace with Israel for certain concessions, including lifting sanctions and all of that stuff. That this has just thrown it all into skew, or is it a game that they're making, they're playing right now with the world, and al-Sharaa is safe? They're just weakening the population, dividing people.
I can say that it's a legitimate, your question. I mean, people are asking that even in, behind closed doors, right? Like, what's going on? Is this part of a whole? Because the Middle East is full of these double containment. Kissinger started this idea of double containment. You empower the Iraqis against the Iranians, then you empower the Iranians against the Iraqis. You empower the Shia against the Sunnis, then you sell it to the Sunnis, and you make everybody fight together, and then you come and make a deal. And get paid for it. I mean, that's that's how basically imperial powers work. I think that Shara is a product of this idea of the awakening. If you remember, in Iraq War, there was this idea of fighting Iranian influence by the awakening of the tribal leaders, the Sunni tribal leaders. They created basically, because what is ISIS? ISIS is nothing but tribesmen from the Badia, from the desert, or from the arid land of Arabia, with some kind of a functioning autocratic terrorist cells, right? But eventually, where are they recruiting from? They're recruiting from the tribes, the rundown, impoverished communities.
Disadvantaged.
Yes,
Yes.
disadvantaged, impoverished communities of the Badia, of even the arid land, which is basically witnessing a climate, catastrophe. So
Who
this
are
is all being,
uneducated and
yeah.
easily manipulated.
You pay them $300 and you send them to fight a battle. This is what's happening in Suweida. So Sharaa is a product of that. They use the same strategy against Assad and Iran, effectively, which is mobilize the tribes, kind of jihadi networks. You call it ISIS, ISIL, you call it Nusra, whatever. I mean, you change names, and everybody went into this game. Turkey went into this game to expand its influence in northern Syria, and now all of this is coming back home to roost. The Assad falls apart. They want to put a government, so they took Julani because eventually the areas that are ruled by Nusra and by basically jihadi groups, and now they tried through some kind of makeup to make Sharaa work. It could work. I mean, like at the end of the day, we have to be pragmatic in terms of politics. Okay, he has international endorsement, even from regional networks, etc. Okay, but show me. The question now is, okay, can Sharaa be reinstituted? Can he be made into a legitimate president? Show me the details. The media says yes. He meets Mr. Macron. He meets, but when it comes to the details, it doesn't add up. The guy is Islamizing the Syrian state. He just stopped one of the major, for example, like Salat Tarawih, like a major Islamic, normal prayer, saying this is bid'ah, for example. So this even among the
What does
Sunni,
that mean?
bid'ah means
And
it's a creation. It's not legitimate. It's not Islamic because basically the factions under him are Wahhabi. They're not Ash'ari like the majority and Sufi like the majority of the Syrian Sunnis. So even the Syrian Sunnis have problems, actually. So Suweida is not alone in that. But Suweida is their warrior-like population, and they have a history of that, of actually toppling governments, and they refuse to be, to succumb to kind of intimidation. They didn't do that under Assad. They're not going to do it under Sharaa. However, the question, again, as I said again, is this makes it a big opportunity for Israel to use that to divide Syria. And I think this way that people know that. I mean, they know about geopolitics and more than I do, but it's the question that the fear is always that things can go out of hand.
well, let's ask Shadi, who's from Suweida. I mean, look, give us a little bit of background on you too, Shadi. When did you move to Berlin and what was it like? Because you came from Suweida, and tell us about the situation that you left.
I left Syria late 2011. I went moving between Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, like everywhere almost. And I moved to Germany 2 years ago. But I can't say like I'm on daily contact with people there, like either with my family or with my friends, with the people, like because I didn't leave, the atmosphere. I'm involved in many things in Syria, like either like in activism or like in the political side. So I'm always in contact with them.
And I think you were part of the opposition in 2011, right? I mean, you were part of the first mobilization against Assad.
Of course.
I know Shadi from a specific incident. I don't know if you were talking about personal, is that basically in 2000, I think 12, Shadi calls me. I never knew who Shadi was. He calls me in Beirut and he comes with about 60 passports. 60 passports, and he says this is a package for Istanbul for the activists in Syria. But tell this guy, whatever his name, we're not gonna show this is the last time I do something like that. This is under Assad, right? So I'm a Druze from Lebanon. He's a Druze from Suweida. You can see that the Druze were involved in the revolution against Assad. So I had to take this package. I didn't know I was taking it.
Right.
And I had to take it to Istanbul because most of the activists were running away from Assad with no passports. They don't have official papers. So this is how I know Shadi, in clandestine operations against Assad. This is-
Real resistance. This is straight out of World
Yeah.
War II.
It reminds me, like now you open the window of the things like I already put in a box, and I lived on the ship for for years. But yeah. So yeah, I know the situation there, and now the situation is really miserable.
Mm,
I don't have any other polite word, to describe what's going on
mm,
now. يعني I don't want, to keep like, blaming this power de facto for starting this, for causing this, for like intentionally doing this. I'm tired of this. I've been doing this like on all over the media everywhere. But I would love to call like, the people themselves, like, to take a step now toward this, because now today is Sweden, next day is another round with another group, because as Nizar said, these people are not like, as the major normal Sunnis we know, we lived with, we love. And by the way, my wife is Sunni. So they're not these people. They are like, they are like, the grandsons of Ibn Taymiyyah. This, the definition, like this simple, like can explain everything for them. And by the way, there is now a new people they are bringing inside, like, which is the Tahrir party. They saw Nusra as secular
wow.
initiative. Can you imagine the mentality? I don't know how to put it, like, in a political word, but these people, they see anyone is not that radical like them. Now there is like a term they use, like to mock the people, like the Sunnis who are against what's going on. They call them cute Sunnis.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
yeah. Your poor cousin, they're not the real, the fundamentalist, crazy radicals that they are. And al-Nusra is terrible. They're horrible. And still they think that they're less than them, nothing like them. So we're dealing with some very dark characters here.
You see, I'm not fully. This is where I mean, this is quite, we need to unpack as well who
Yeah.
rules Damascus.
Yes, that's
Mine,
right.
this is one of the differences, by the way.
100%.
I think most of the differences, for example, between Hijri and Jumblat is about tactics rather than strategy. For example, Jumblat, in being the leader of most of the Lebanese Druze, is about tactics. From the analysis of who rules Damascus, is it Sharar that really rules Damascus? To my mind, actually, there are factions. There are two factions in Damascus. There's the jihadi groups. I mean, Shadi can tell me if I'm wrong. There's the jihadi groups, but there's also the massive, jolly Sunni, very happy with the downfall of Assad. And Shara has to basically doesn't have full authority over the jihadi factions. Who rules Damascus? I think that Shara basically is not the problem, to my mind,
Mm,
necessarily. The problem is that there's all these jihadis under him.
mm,
I think that he's also stuck, like Hijri, in a similar debacle.
mm,
He has a very inflamed Sunni population behind him. He has the jihadist under him, which he cannot control, and on top of that, he has Turkey and UAE and Saudi Arabia, which he needs to. So he needs to swing a heavy, to deliver a quite something in Syria. Can he? I mean, that is a big question mark.
mm.
So to my mind, till today, still has unanimous agreement from regional powers and from international powers. So from a tactical point of view, this is my issue with also Suweida, is that maybe the Shara should not be the target.
I want to jump in there on that point and ask you, does Shara control his fighters or doesn't he control them? Is it an excuse for him to maneuver his real nature and that's going back to who he really was as a leader of al-Nusra or Ms. Gilani and his previous manifestation, where is he? Is this suit that he's wearing just a disguise for him to execute what his real motivations are? And you're talking about the Sunni driving the Sunni movement, but the radical Sunni movement, and he needs to deliver for a lot of big players in the region. And then I want to ask you, well, how does that augur for Lebanon? Because if that's happening really close by, we've got a lot of Sunnis here, and a lot of people have been saying to me that there's going to be an uprising in Lebanon too, that we have to be concerned, and it might start with the Syrians that are still here and even the Palestinians. So I'm opening that up to both of you, if we can go into those discussions. Faddal Shadi.
First of all, I would say Sharaa can control them. He controlled them before. He unified them under one before all that happened, and before even 7th of October. They were all under his, they built a unified, I don't know what they call it.
Force.
The force, and they start an upfront at that time. So he controlled them, and he's the most powerful one in this group. That's anyone following the jihadist movement, will understand this. Since he came, he left Dawahiri, he made an uprising against the Dawahiri. This guy was that powerful. So you cannot get in front of Al-Qaeda if you don't have that much, power.
Is he denying responsibility, or is this just a maneuver because he's claiming he doesn't have control?
He said it before. We have a lot of buttons. We can press anyone we need at the time it's needed. So he's using this. The guy went at 5 a.m. On a speech that incited the violence, brought all the tribal from all over Syria, towards Suweida. So the guy knew what he's doing. The guy facilitated this. People came for 100 kilometers from Deir ez-Zor to Suweida. Not even one police officer or anyone asked them, hi, hello, where are you going? No, they went there. And I know this from Dar'a because I was in contact every day with people in Dar'a. For the first 2 days, Sharaa sent them food and all this logistic stuff. And then he left them for Dar'a people, and that made a dispute inside Dar'a because they were not ready for this war, but he has this power. If he wanted to stop this, he could stop it. He could not send them, towards Suweida, but he did it because he thought that because he felt in the trap. By the way, he felt in the trap.
Whose trap?
Israel. In Baku, they give him, this trap, and he went and he felt.
He was tricked in Baku.
Yes.
Negotiations.
Yes, he thought he put Israel in his pocket.
But Karam, this is the thing. It's again the problem with Syria now, that Sharaa represents an international and regional agreement, basically. He's the man that could bring these forces, and this is what I'm saying. This is what we're stuck with in the Levant. That all of a sudden there's an international agreement beyond our capacity to deal with. Not the Sunnis of Damascus who are Ash'aris, who hate the jihadis, who stayed with Assad actually because they knew that the Wahhabis are coming. They we don't want to do anything with them. So all of a sudden, all of the Levant, including the Druze and the Alawites and the Ismaili, are stuck with an international agreement that has empowered the jihadis, and they don't want to let him out, because if you let Sharaa fall, also, all of a sudden, the Turkish national security, as I said before, there's a fear that the division of Syria would lead to all these uncalculated events, right? So the question, but this is why it's very important that when we resolve, if we're going to resolve this, we have to put pressure on another regional agreement. Yeah, I mean, basically, Syria needs a transitional justice path, and the stakeholders involved in it cannot continue with the idea that you can rule Syria, some place like Syria, with such a government, with an opaque transitional process, a non-inclusive process, etc. Because again, Shadi, I mean, Sharaa has a lot of popularity. We cannot deny that. That is one of the issues that, we can say this, yes, between the elite intelligentsia of the left, but at the end of the day, if you go to the streets, people like Sharaa, and this is one of the issues that
Why do
may.
they like him? Why do they
Nizar,
like him?
Nizar, this is my question. I know people like Shara, but I'm asking you, like, imagine if he went with an inclusive transitional period process, really inclusive. He brought everyone, not as sectarians, but just as a people, as like citizenship, as citizen of Syria. He brought them, he brought everyone, to the court. From, I don't know, I don't want to say like he brought himself like to the court, but at least he brought like people like Assad people, like, to the court, not bringing them and make a deal, and then they leave between us and Damascus now after they killed like Syrian people for 14 years. Imagine how the support would go. You know what I mean?
But is
And
he ever likely to do that? I mean, that's not his,
look,
it's not
We have
look
an
likely.
at
exp-
Damascus.
we have an expression in Arabic. It's literally a bit profane. I mean, which says "Ya talib al-dibs min tiz nims." It's like asking molasses from the ass of the weasel.
Right.
I mean, I'm not sure if he can deliver that. That's that's actually one of the contradictory elements of Sharaa. You just brought a jihadi Wahhabi, you dressed him nicely, and you told him, don't misbehave. It needs to be stable. That's what they asked him because there's other issues on the table, right? They need to stop Iranian influence into his, like we are still in liminal phase. Maybe Sharaa eventually would fall. I mean, something new would come. But at this current process, the problem, everything is so fragile, and hence the possibility of escalation is high, and the possibility of genocide is very high.
You mentioned something very important there. They need a stable Syria because an unstable Syria would allow Iran to come back in and manipulate elements and the rise of the Shia again, and potentially Hezbollah, who don't want to be in Lebanon because there's a lot of controls happening in Lebanon, might move over to Syria. It's confusing. It's a conundrum because then you've got Israel really trying to disrupt and destroy the stability because it serves its interests. Then it wants a buffer zone in those northern areas and the southern, so the higher areas and southern province of Syria. But is it actually going to achieve its objective if Syria is destabilized? And then you've got more opportunity for more conflagration around the region and back into Lebanon. So what are we missing? What's the bigger game here that we're missing? Because obviously this isn't happening without a puppet master pulling the strings. Nothing ever happens, especially in the Middle East. Al-Sharaa is a tool being used for a purpose, but and again, we've also seen the puppet master fail in their objective. But yeah, I want to open that up, and then I want to come back to Lebanon. But let's look at unpacking that. If they're destabilizing Syria, there's a huge risk that Iran is going to benefit from that, and their biggest threat, according to Israel, is Iran. Although this is propaganda, and Iran's not interested in invading Israel, never has. And I've done a recent interview with Philip Giraldi, CIA, said, this is just Hasbara, the Israeli propaganda. So tell me, what do you think? What's the bigger game?
Shadi?
Yani, it's like, to deconstruct the geopolitical map here, and especially after this last clashes, like, you need like, I don't know, it's a series of works. You start by country, because what
Need a
happened
crystal ball.
you know, because what happened recently like shows how like everyone is being used as a tool. In Suweida, al-Sharaa himself, like the Sunnis, you know, everyone, they are being used as tool. And Jordanian now, they are freaking out after what happened, like with everything happened in the region. The tribal never mobilized, you know, unless like there is in south in Ma'an and blah blah blah. They had some issues, like, you know, but they never had this mobilization of armed people. Even with this genocide, the ongoing genocide on their border in Gaza, they didn't do this. They did this now. So they are freaking out. And Turkey now also, they are freaking out because like they just finished demilitarized PKK. So imagine like you are in a peace pathway and in a sudden you see now this stupid head, they are surrounding Ahmed al-Shara on TV 24/7, calling, you know, Kurds in Syria, you are next.
It's very,
For
very, very
God's
true.
sake, how stupid you can be, you know, because like we're talking about like a real military there, 100,000 something. They are well organized, weaponized, and with real training from the Americans themselves. They're not some sheikhs and like, you know, some young people like, you know, angry they want to protect their land. No, we're talking about a real military,
Professional army. Yeah.
professional army. So what will happen there, they will bring, because I'm sure BKK, they are not stupid to give away like all their weapons like this. This is the natural instance, you know. So I am sure that will lead to another war in Turkey. No one wants, you know. And I say that like Israel is the chef now who's making and putting this spices, you know, because we have, and I'm sorry for this, we have, no, I don't want to say it. I will be I will be cancelled everywhere. We have a very smart people. They go behind all this stupidity, you know, they run, you know, they run. And we say like, you know, "Kwa urikab," after this stupid things and blindly, you know, and look what happened in Sweden. And this is only the first round. It didn't stop. It's a pause now. It will come back. It will start. If we don't like, you know, deconstruct the issue itself and like start the DDR process exactly, you know, this is my issue because Sharia, what he went, he start to demilitarize the non-Sunnis, which you put people like, you know, under the threat that like, huh? What do you mean?
I mean, the grand game, if I may, I think there's I wouldn't say there's a grand game. There's geopolitical interests of serious players. Turkey has an interest in demilitarizing the Kurds, and hence they don't want a decentralized Syria, because a decentralized Syria means there's a pocket for Kurdish insurgency, and there's a possibility for destabilizing the Anatolian plateau itself. So they want a centralized state, and if they can expand their influence and swallow all of Syria, they wouldn't. I mean, the Ottoman Empire was there 100 years ago. They wouldn't say no. So they're trying to maximize their profits. Israelis on the other side understand that. So they're willing to use, this is the fear again, that they're going to use this whole Druze Suweida issue to move into southern Syria. Actually, they don't even need the Druze. They're doing it anyway, you know, and they're going to move, take southern Syria to maximize their profit or you know, geopolitical profit, if you want. They're going to try to link this corridor to the Kurds by basically endangering the Turks, saying to them, we're going to create a pocket for you, and then come to a settlement by negotiating with the Turks. And hence, maybe they can keep Golan and keep a bit of southern Syria as well, the buffer zone.
Yeah.
It's if we take it from a perspective of you know, profit maximization, you know, of the geopolitical players. Syria is basically a place between Turkey and Israel, and the rest are just chess pieces moving along the Saudis, of course, are involved, but the Saudis have one geopolitical interest. It is they don't want Iran to be back to the Levant. They want to cut the Iranian influence. That is their geopolitical interest. What happens to the rest? For them, it's fix it. They gave the money to the Americans to fix it, you know. And in that sense, the Americans, their position is whatever pleases Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Israel will do. So everybody now are moving their pieces to maximize their share of Syria. The question now for the Syrians, now we go back to the Syrians, the people of the land. From the perspective of the Druze have no interest in siding with Israel against the majority of the Sunni population. This would mean that a bloodbath in the next 100 years, maybe not now, will happen because the people wouldn't understand this geopolitical equation. They would understand only that the Druze stood against our dream of a Sunni majority government and they just took the sides of the Israelis, right? From the Druze perspective, they're like, okay, but give me a deal to enter this damn state you're talking about, other than jihadi Wahhabi government. Give me something I can work with. So are the Kurds, by the way. To wrap up, I would say from my perspective, there is no way, this is the history. If we go back to the history, the Druze and the Kurds were the guarantors of security in the Levant for more than 700 years, since the Ayyubi state, since Salah ad-Din, you know, since Saladin. You cannot come as a wali of Damascus, as a governor of Damascus, and outmaneuver the Kurds and the Druze. You know, you're going to fight them, but you're going to have to sit with them on the table and say the future of Syria passes through Suweida and passes through Afrin. You have to sit with them and make a deal the Lebanese way, which guarantees Israeli interests, Saudi interests, Turkish interests. But instead of being basically snatched by these three powers, it will be a balance of power that kind of, you know, gives everybody their interest, if you want.
But do the Druze have anything to negotiate with? They don't have an army. They have some, you know, groups, but you've got to have strength to be sitting at the negotiating table and be able to really pull, you know.
This is why I think that in many ways, Hijri is using Israelis. I mean, he's playing a dangerous game. It's the only gamble he has. Right now, imagine it's a genocidal army that came to Suweida, killing civilians like blank, you know, shooting civilians beside the road. Saudi Arabia did not even have a statement of condemnation. Neither did the Turks, like most of the regional geopolitical players. And in effect, the only gamble he had is that he knows that Israelis have an interest in taking southern Syria. So he basically pulled the gun at the end and said, okay, if you're telling me I have two options, I get killed by the jihadis on the wall, or I will use this powerful bear that is gonna eventually kill me as well. I'm gonna play my last bet. It's like chess. Okay, I still have one move. I'm gonna take it, right? So the problem is Damascus and the whole regional establishment, either out of folly or out of hubris, or out of really, like, as usual, the Druze history is full of that. It's basically smug, you know, proud leaders who come drifting and saying, there are 5%, they're a bunch of whatever, you know, mountaineers. They cannot resist. And eventually they break their head. I mean, they break their neck. That's the history of Suweida. Jabal al-Arab is known for that. The French had the same mistake. They sent soldiers, they're saying, oh, we can take this revolution, and Jabal al-Arab destroyed them. So there's a history of resistance there. I think the same thing is happening now, is outplaying again. If people read history, they will understand that they have to come to a compromise with the Druze to bring them away from this, you know, like the devil's pact, the Faustian pact with the Israelis.
And is that what Walid Jumblat is trying to do with his statements? And
I think that's the diplomatic position of Jumblat. That's why he went to see Erdogan when he first met Shara, because he knows that, okay, somebody has to engineer the equation that will balance southern Syria. And by the way, if southern Syria breaks, Lebanon breaks. Going back to history again, I'm against Hezbollah's militarization in Lebanon. But when Israeli invasion and we saw the destruction of Hezbollah in the south, I was super afraid because historically speaking, when the Shia of Jabal Amel are defeated, generally not because they like each other, but by pure geopolitical equations in the Levant, the Druze move in Jabal Suweida in southern Syria. This is what happened under the French. The French crushed the resistance of Jabal Amel. All of a sudden, Sultan Bashar had to move. So there are very delicate balances between ethnic and religious minorities. And whoever is engineering the new Middle East, I was telling exactly what I was telling you now to a friend from DC, and he started laughing. He's like, all this complexity, and you're going to tell me the Americans know what they're doing? They have no idea. They just met Erdogan over tea and met bin Salman, and they told them this, we need this, and they're like, do it. So they have no idea what they're in for, if you want. So I don't think that there's
And do you believe it?
You believe it?
Do you believe it? They have no idea.
I believe that they don't care, even if they have an idea. Like whoever is calling the shots, they don't necessarily. I think Israel. We overestimate in the Arab world how much Israel acts also independently. It also forces the American hands. It's not completely, as we think it is. Like, oh, the Americans tell the Israelis what to do. It's like Hezbollah and Iran.
Even Tom Parak said it.
There's a symbiosis between the groups. They affect each other, and so Nasrallah moves the regime in Iran and vice versa. So we cannot actually also speak of, and this is why Levant is very important, because in effect, it's a center of gravity for too many forces, by the way.
True. Let's finish the discussion about Lebanon. What is the risk to Lebanon? Is there a risk right now? Are there forces within Lebanon that are ready to rise? And if Syria disintegrates, what happens to Lebanon?
Yeah, and if you want, as I see it now, from like outsider, perspective, I see like it's already started. We have people from Tripoli, Akkar, blah blah blah. All these they already went into this fight in Suweida. When this moves out of the border of Lebanon, it will go back because like the tension happened already. We have many cases now. Maybe the media they're not covering.
Sudanese that went from Tripoli to help attack the people in Suweida. And just clarify for me, we have some reports saying 28 people, but other reports saying thousands of people were massacred in Suweida.
Yep. We're talking about thousands because till now, we have 1,500 dead body inside city of Suweida. We have 15 villages that people they didn't reach till this moment. And my village is one of them. And we have many people got killed or kidnapped from that area because they went they got in a trap also because of this action. But to go back to the issue, there's a tension now in Lebanon where people Druze community, they are attacking some Syrian cars, they ask about their identity. If they are Sunni, they attack them and blah, blah, blah. So this flame already reached Lebanon, and Lebanon is a great place, to give them this. They had nothing to do with this sectarian conflict, never, ever, So yeah, I saw that coming to Lebanon, because they use it. These leaders, like the sectarian leaders in Lebanon, they will use it at some point. And as I told you, when the fighters went from Tripoli, from north to south of Syria, that means they will go back to Tripoli, they will go back to Akkar, but they will go back not by individual, they will go back with a conflict, and that will start there. This I don't know how Lebanese will solve it, but I know how they usually do. They go in a conflict, they kill each other.
Nizar, what's your comment on that before we wrap up?
I think that a couple of things. First, Hezbollah is very happy. After the scenes of the mass killings in Suweida, there are calls among Lebanese Christians, like the phalangists, like Nadim Jmail, for example, saying, "I understand very well why Hezbollah does not want to put down their weapons." So it emboldened the Shia and it emboldened basically Hezbollah to refuse to put down their weapons without serious international guarantees, especially that Barak has said that United States cannot force Israel to do anything. So there are no guarantees. So we might go to a flare up in the south of Lebanon now. That's one. Second, definitely that there's tensions between Druze and Sunnis, but I don't think that it's deep enough. Again, in Lebanon, especially in Lebanon, there's a deep history of Druze siding with the Sunnis, like Rafi al-Hariri, etc. I believe in diffusing the tension. And I believe that there's a diplomatic solution to come out of this whole quagmire.
What is it?
It's basically transitional justice in Syria and an international investigation in the war crimes that happened in South Syria. Because this would stabilize it. It would help Jordan as well. Jordan does not want a jihadi cell at the borders of Jordan. This would mean the destruction of Jordan in like 50 years. It's a strategic threat.
Who's calling for this transitional justice in Syria?
Hikmat al-Hajri only. Hikmat al-Hajri only. And if there is any religious leader is saying like other than this, he's lying. I don't want to curse, Besides
there are
the
the
left,
Kurds as well.
Besides the left,
there are the Kurds.
Yeah, the Kurds are out of this now, because like we're talking now about like this, like what's under control of Ahmad al-Sharaa, let's say. And this is the main problem. This is the main issue. Just like let me wrap it in a like quick. The problem with al-Hajri, he never thought for power. He didn't ask to be a leader. He asked like to be understanding. To have this understanding, he called for a national army, a real national army. And that was like the only condition to give up the weapons, not to have this functional, and militia army as they are doing. Because as you know, now it's called the Sunni army, the Syrian Sunni army. And the ideological preparation inside this, it's a Salafi method. So this was the first condition to give up the weapon, and the other thing was like to start to build like this political, rebuilding for the whole Syria, to start a new coherent one, because like we just left Ba'ath mentality. We don't want to go back to one color mentality. Syria is bigger than this, and I want to say this like exactly and in this manner. Without the Druze, there was no Syria. Without the Druze, there was no Syria. Druze, they are the only one at that time who refused to be a small, religious or like this compound.
Sure.
They fought and they gave a lot of martyrs, to build this country. So respect them. Don't go and dehumanize their simple, because they don't understand. And I said this the other day on PPC. Shara made a mistake. He didn't brought any consultant, in his team from Suweida. Other than that, like he would, advise him not to mess with the symbol of this community, because they will go like, and this is like, I don't know, the nature of these compoundment, in Syria, like they will go back behind their leaders when they are under the threat. And that's what happened. In March, like Hikmat al-Hajri was almost alone. Everyone was like, was blaming him like, okay, stop this, we can go, like we can do it, blah, 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 blah. Then the coastal massacre happened. So people like, they start, to back. Okay, like, no, we go for negotiation. We go like for a real, dialogue with all the Syrians, not like a fabricated for hours dialogue, a national dialogue. And you read declaration was written in Ankara, you should start this discussion between Syrians, but no, We started to call for this national dialogue, and no one answered. And after what happened in Jaramana and Ashrafiyat Sahnaya, people they knew and they understood like no, it's coming to them, and like it started and it will never stop if they will give their army their weapons. Like what happened in coastal, like it will go back like and happen in Suweida. And
Thank you,
that's
Shadi.
why they made al-Hajri as the leader, the only leader in Sweden, and people like following him. And despite what they are saying, also this propaganda, the militias of Hikmat al-Hajri, he doesn't found, and fund the group, the armed group, but they follow him. And this is like how this community is built, They don't understand this. And if you don't understand this,
Point this.
you will never solve the issue.
Thank you very much, Shadi. I'm going to leave the final word to Nizar, please.
I think we've said enough. The only way out is basically a political pathway.
Okay.
And a diplomatic pathway that stabilizes southern Syria, stabilizes the Syrian fears of different communities. The way forward is clear in that sense. It cannot continue like it is. Sharaa will have to change after this quagmire he put himself into, and he put the other states into, by the way.
But before then, you're predicting there's going to be further bloodshed, sadly.
Sadly, yes.
I mean, this is how it is in this country,
Region.
I don't know. People, they will never fed up, by blood, and that's
Sad. Very
uh,
sad.
the sad part of the story. Because, like, till now, I don't think like there is like I don't want to say like community leaders in Syria, but like people like till now the political initiatives in Syria, they are shy. Imagine till now, there's no one declaration from like all this oppositions like we saw like during like the 50 years of al-Assad family, calling for a comprehensive political pathway. They are like, as
Still
I don't
waiting to
know,
see.
like it's whitewashed declaration from them, and
They're
like
not
they
sure.
like they are outsiders.
Yeah, they're unsure. They're still not sure. And as Nizar and you said, there's still a lot of popularity for al-Sharaa, and they're maybe waiting to see. But that's confusing the whole situation and allowing this disruption and violence to continue. Look, thank you both very much, Shadi in Berlin and Nizar here in Beirut. Thank you for joining me. Very important topic. A lot of people reaching out to me to get into this topic. So I'm glad we were able to do that today. And I'm sure we're going to be jumping on another call not too far in the future. Thank you again for joining me, both of you.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you, Shadi.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Real Talk and experiencing firsthand the real stories told by real people. I hope you found value and meaning and encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Your ongoing financial support is vital to our ability to continue delivering these stories, so please remember to click on the donate button in the description, giving only what you can afford. I spent my whole life giving my time, money and skill to serve human rights and social justice causes, and I know it's not easy to keep giving selflessly. But this work is important because the mainstream media has failed to live up to their obligations. So we need to step up, speak up, or we're no better than them. I believe by tuning in to this podcast, you are someone who wants to know the facts and the truth, so you can independently decide what to believe and what not to. My job is to deliver that information. Yours is to place a value on it. Whatever you decide is humbly welcome. Thanks again, and see you on the next episode of Real Talk.